For decades, the professional world ran on a very specific, totally undisputed timeline. You know the one. Intelligence meant depth. It meant thinking deeply, analyzing every angle, and taking your absolute time to arrive at the precise, correct answer. That slow, linear timeline of human thinking, that was the gold standard. That's what got you promoted, respected, and put in the executive chair. But right now, today, that timeline is being entirely overwritten. We are entering this electric, hyper-fast era of AI processing loops. These loops are recursive, they're incredibly fast, and frankly, they are exponential. What it means to be an effective professional is literally being redefined right before our eyes. I mean, think about it. What happens when systems can suddenly generate, test, and refine complex ideas in a matter of seconds? If one person can now run 50 iterations in the exact same time it takes another person to run just one, who actually becomes the more effective player in the market?
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to break down this monumental shift in a structured way today. Here's the roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look back at the era of depth to understand the constraints we used to work under. Second, we're going to get into the actual mechanics of compressing the thinking cycle. Third, we need to unpack the uncomfortable reality of speed versus perfect execution. And finally, we'll land on redefining what this new intelligence actually looks like.
Okay, but before we get too comfortable with that structured breakdown, I want to jump in and challenge a core assumption you probably hold right now. Think about your own daily work. Think about your team, the people you consider absolute top performers. Is the smartest person in the room still the one who thinks the deepest? Or is the smartest person now the one who moves the fastest with continuous feedback?
I want you to make a choice right now. As professionals, we are so used to just absorbing information without taking a definitive stance. But something fundamental is shifting beneath our feet, and you need to position yourself. I want to know where your instincts lie on this. Who becomes more effective in today's landscape, the deep thinker or the fast iterator? Jump down and share your perspective in the comments, because intelligence might no longer be defined by how deeply you think in total isolation, but by how fast you can learn, adapt, and iterate in motion.
All right, let's move to that first structural point so we can really understand where we came from. We're looking at intelligence in a completely constrained world. Traditionally, as we've established, intelligence was totally inextricably linked with depth. You were considered a top-tier professional if you could analyze thoroughly, build these incredibly structured arguments over weeks, and arrive at perfectly well-reasoned conclusions way before anyone else dared to make a move.
And honestly, that made perfect sense. Thinking was expensive. Information was limited, processing that information manually was painfully slow, and running an iteration of a project was incredibly costly in terms of both time and capital. Because of those massive, unavoidable constraints, depth literally equaled your competitive advantage.
Exactly. But we don't live in that constrained world anymore. The cage is open. We now have effectively infinite processing power right at our fingertips. All that old friction, gone. AI doesn't just give us static answers, it gives us cycles. And in an unconstrained world, iteration speed equals power.
Which brings me to this massive, paradigm-shifting question, and this is aimed right at your executive ego. Was depth inherently valuable all those years, or was it simply necessary because speed was limited? That is a very, very different question, and honestly, the answer completely rewrites how we should be valuing our time and our teams today. When constraints shatter, everything built on top of them shatters too. The metrics we use to hire, promote, and even value ourselves are all tied to that old anchor. I really want to know where you stand on this. Are you clinging to the anchor, or are you embracing the explosion of possibilities? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let the weight of those shifting constraints really sink in for a second. Because if the underlying realities of professional work change, the very definitions of what makes you good at your job absolutely have to change too.
Okay, let's anchor this discussion back to the actual mechanics. We're moving into compressing the thinking cycle through AI and cognitive acceleration. We really need to shift this explainer from abstract philosophy to the practical, day-to-day reality of your workflow. This is where AI completely changes the equation for the effective professional. Because AI isn't just a search engine spitting out a static response. It's a rapid-fire engine that accelerates your actual thinking cycles.
Just think about a traditional workflow. Step 1, idea. Step 2, simulate. Step 3, test. Step 4, refine. And then it finally loops back around. In the past, this 4-step workflow could take a professional team an entire fiscal quarter. The friction between an idea and a refined outcome was enormous. Now, you can cycle through idea, simulate, test, and refine in seconds, literally seconds. This is what we mean by compressed cycles. It's a continuous, rapid-fire loop of cognitive acceleration that drastically shrinks the time between your initial hypothesis and a proven result.
We can totally ground this abstract concept into concrete professional examples across completely different fields. Let's look at strategy. The old way meant a strategist taking weeks to build one perfect financial model or market scenario. The new AI iteration way, generating 50 divergent scenarios rapidly, stress testing them instantly, and finding the optimal path before the kickoff meeting even ends. Now consider coding. The old DEBS model meant writing extensive logic and waiting for brutal compile times just to find a single bug. Now a developer can test completely different architectural approaches and iterate code blocks instantly with AI assistance. Writing has transformed just as dramatically. It used to be about agonizing over a single first draft. Now a writer can instantly iterate the tone, structure, and clarity of a document 10 times before they even go to lunch. And finally, decision loops. Executive decisions used to rely on delayed, quarterly data. Now they are continuous, real-time loops. This isn't just a marginal gain in productivity, guys. This is a fundamental acceleration of human cognition across literally every domain.
So let me intercept that mechanical breakdown with another probing question for you. What actually happens to your industry, your company, and your specific career when thinking itself becomes accelerated, when the cost of running a professional iteration drops to effectively zero?
I really want you to internalize the reality of your own accelerated workflows. What does your day-to-day look like when the friction is just gone? Let's discuss it. Drop your specific industry examples in the comments below. Think deeply about the implications here, because AI isn't here to replace your thinking, but it is absolutely, fundamentally changing how your thinking creates a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Which brings us to a critical junction in this explainer. We need to address speed versus perfect execution, the hidden shift in today's workforce. We have to focus on a very uncomfortable truth about corporate culture. For decades, perfectionism was heavily praised. It was the ultimate shield against criticism. But in these new, super-fast learning loops, perfectionism actually becomes a massive bottleneck. If speed increases exponentially, perfection inherently loses its dominance.
So let's challenge that ingrained corporate perfectionism right now. Ask yourself, are you optimizing for correctness or are you optimizing for iteration? Because in these fast loops, you don't actually need to be perfect on the first try. You just need to improve continuously and rapidly. And that requires a massive behavioral change that, frankly, a lot of professionals are completely unprepared for. Consider this idea. Someone who waits to be perfect may move slower. Someone who iterates quickly may outperform, even if that fast iterator's initial quality is technically lower. That is a really tough pill to swallow for high achievers who built their entire careers on being flawless. But it's the reality of a high-velocity environment. So what are the perfectionist bottlenecks slowing your team down right now? Jump into the comments and let's analyze them together.
Let's actively dismantle the traditional corporate reward system for a second. If iteration becomes cheap, if it costs you almost nothing in time or resources to try an idea, what matters more, being right once or improving quickly?
Don't just nod along. I want you to actively engage with this. Tell us your optimization strategy in the comments. Are you hanging on to the old reward system that demands absolute perfection from day one, or are you adapting to the new one that actually rewards velocity and rapid adjustment? The divide between those two mindsets is exactly where entire companies are fracturing right now, and where individual careers are either taking off or totally stalling out. Because here is the subtle, hidden career risk that almost no one is talking about. Do you wait to be right or move to get better? The risk is that you might still be optimizing for depth, endlessly polishing that one single idea for weeks, while the underlying ecosystem has already shifted to a system that exclusively rewards speed. And that gap between you and the fast iterators, it's only going to grow exponentially. I want you to make a definitive choice right now about your own professional trajectory. Head down to the comments and simply type right or better based on what you're optimizing for today. Just acknowledging this shift is the very first step toward fundamentally changing how you work and how you lead your teams. Let's see which side of history this audience is leaning toward. All right, we are steering into our final section, and I want to be incredibly clear here. When we talk about redefining the new intelligence, this is about evolution, not irrelevance. The message discipline we need to maintain here is absolutely vital. We are not saying human intelligence is irrelevant. We are not saying human thinking is disappearing or just being completely replaced by machines. What we are saying is that the definition of intelligence is fundamentally evolving. The metric of success has completely changed. Let's explicitly define this new paradigm. Evolving intelligence is the capacity for adaptive speed. It's the ability to learn, adapt, test, and correct faster rather than simply acquiring and hoarding static knowledge.
It's moving from a static brain to a dynamic network. Human cognition remains absolutely vital, but your operational velocity is what sets you apart now. Your advantage no longer comes from what you rigidly know. It comes from how quickly you evolve what you know in tandem with AI.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of this entire explainer. Is the smartest person simply the fastest learner now? Think about it. The person who runs the most cognitive cycles. The person who integrates feedback the absolute fastest. The person who adapts in real time. Is that the new genius of the modern workplace?
I want your final verdict. Let us know in the comments where you land on this debate. We've redefined professional intelligence today, but a definition only matters if it's actually applied in the real world. Do you agree that adaptive speed is the ultimate metric for the modern, effective professional? This is a conversation that's going to shape the next decade of corporate leadership, and your perspective really matters.
So we leave you with one final provocative thought to take back to your teams.
Are you optimizing for being right or for becoming better faster?
This shift is not obvious at first, but once you see it,
You literally cannot unsee it. Drop your final thoughts in the comments, start optimizing for speed, and we'll see you in the next explainer.